Elder Zixel stood before the crystal window of the High Council chamber, watching his world die. Andros Prime had always been beautiful. Cities grew like living gems from the planet's surface, spires of silver and blue crystal stretching toward the heavens. Rivers of light ran through their streets, powered by energy drawn from deep beneath the crust. For 3,000 years, the Kari had known peace. They were builders, artists, thinkers. Their weapons had long ago been dismantled, their wars forgotten. But none of that mattered now. The sky bled with colors no Kari had words for. Shimmering rivers of red and green fire cut across the heavens as vast shapes tore through the atmosphere. The void swarm had arrived. Each creature was the size of a city block, their writhing bodies made of black metal fused with pulsing flesh. They did not fly so much as swim through the air itself, like predators moving through unseen oceans. Zixel's reflection stared back at him in the crystal glass, his 3 eyes wide, his silver skin trembling. Behind him, voices shouted over one another, advisors, officers, desperate leaders arguing with fear disguised as reason. "Elder," said Advisor Velter, rushing forward, his voice breaking. "The northern continent is gone. The swarm consumed every city, every mountain, even the ocean. It turns to sludge, black and lifeless." Zixel's hearts pounded. 5 days ago, their world had been whole. Now half of it was gone, half a world consumed in less than a week. "Has anyone answered our call?" he asked quietly. His voice barely carried over the noise. A communications officer turned from her console, her young face pale, her silver skin dulled with fear. "No, Elder. The Altarians sent regrets. The Kranari refused. The Ethereals ignored us completely." Of course they had. The Altarians were philosophers. They sang more than they fought. The Kranari were warriors, but even they feared the swarm's endless hunger. And the Ethereals, they had never cared for flesh and blood creatures. Zixel's people were alone. "Wait," said the officer suddenly. Her hands trembled as she pressed glowing symbols across her console. "We're receiving a response." Every voice in the chamber stopped. The silence was suffocating. Zixel's heart seemed to pause in his chest. "From who?" The officer looked at her screen, disbelief flickering in her eyes. "Unknown, Elder. The message comes from a star system not in our databases. They call their world Earth, their species humans." A whisper ran through the chamber. None of them had heard of such a place. "What do they say?" Zixel demanded. The officer swallowed. "Message received, help is coming, hold your position." The words were simple, direct, yet in them was something no other species had offered: hope. Zixel felt a spark ignite in his chest. "Send a reply, thank them, ask how many ships, how strong their weapons are when they will arrive." "Already sent, Elder. We await their response." The chamber buzzed again, this time with nervous speculation. Who were these humans? Why did they respond when greater powers had not? Minutes later, the reply came. The officer read it aloud, her voice unsteady. "ETA to your system, 72 hours. Bringing full military response package. Prepare landing zones for heavy equipment. Do not approach our ships upon arrival. That is all." "That is all?" Advisor Lexon demanded. His crystal robes shook with every word. No details, no reassurance, no promises of safety. Zixel looked out the window at the burning horizon. They did not need to promise, they are coming. But later, as his advisors scoured the Galactic database for anything on Earth, that fragile hope began to tremble. The records called Earth a Class X Deathworld, a place where storms could crush mountains, where the very air could kill. Its creatures were predators. Its dominant species, these humans, were described as violent, warlike, aggressive. They fought each other with weapons capable of destroying continents. They had survived every horror their world threw at them, and in doing so had become something the galaxy feared. "Elder," whispered Science Advisor Carvin, his voice shaking. "These humans, they are monsters. Even the strongest civilizations avoid them." Zixel closed his eyes. Outside, another crystal tower crumbled as the swarm consumed it. His people screamed in the streets, fleeing the endless black tide. Finally, he spoke. "If monsters are all we have left, then perhaps monsters are exactly what we need." 72 hours later, the sky of Andros Prime split apart. Human ships dropped from hyperspace like falling meteors, their hulls jagged and dark, built for one purpose only: destruction. They were not beautiful. They were not graceful. They were terrible, like blades of war cutting through the stars. A harsh voice filled the council chamber. cold and professional. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. We are beginning combat operations immediately. Keep your civilians clear of the combat zones. We will contact you when the area is secure." The transmission ended without pleasantries. Through the crystal window, Zixel watched the human fleet descend. The monsters of Earth had arrived. And for the first time in days, he dared to hope that the monsters outside his window might be defeated by monsters from beyond the stars. The sky burned as the first explosions lit the horizon. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the EDF Vengeance, watching the world below unravel. The view screen showed a nightmare. Black masses crawling across the surface of Andros Prime, devouring crystal cities like carrion feeders on a corpse. Towers collapsed into sludge, rivers turned to tar, whole landscapes twisted into poolsing black flesh. It was a disease made flesh, and it was spreading fast. "Status report," Morrison barked. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez looked up from her console, dark hair tied back, voice clipped but steady. "Sir, surface scans show at least 300 large bioforms, each one city-sized. Thousands more smaller entities, everything from the size of houses down to creatures no bigger than a rat. All of them hostile. They appear to share energy signatures as if networked." "Connected?" Morrison asked. "Yes, sir. Kill one and the rest adapt." Morrison's jaw tightened. He had read the Kari's desperate messages during the 3-day jump. None of the other galactic powers had intervened. They had done the math. They knew what the Void swarm was capable of, and they had abandoned Andros Prime. But humanity had not. "Deploy ground teams," Morrison ordered. His voice carried the weight of command honed over decades of war. "Alpha and Bravo squads go in first, heavy equipment behind them. This is not a rescue. This is extermination." The crew moved with machine-like precision. They knew the cost. Some of them wouldn't come back. Humanity never pretended otherwise. In the belly of a dropship, Sergeant Ben Cole sat with 12 soldiers of Alpha Squad. His armor creaked as the dropship bucked through atmosphere, rattling like a tin can about to burst. 2 minutes to landing," the pilot barked. Cole tightened the straps on his exosuit. The armor wasn't just protection, it was a weapon in itself. Layered alloys reinforced with carbon ceramic mesh, hydraulics in every limb, a helmet designed to withstand radiation levels that would fry most species alive. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't pretty. It was human. "All right, listen up," Cole growled over comms. His voice was a low rumble, steady grounding. "We hit the ground running, no hesitation. The swarm doesn't stop, so neither do we. Remember your training, remember your team. And remember," he smirked inside his helmet, "if it's ugly, shoot it till it stops moving." Nervous chuckles broke through the static. Even in hell, humor kept humans alive. The dropship slammed into the surface. The ramp blew open before it stopped moving. Heat, smoke, and a smell like burning rot poured inside. Cole's boots hit alien ground first. The air was thick and oily. It burned the lungs even through filters. The city around them was unrecognizable. What had once been crystal spires and glowing bridges was now a landscape of writhing black tendrils. "Movement. Contact front," Cole roared. From the ruins surged a monster 15 feet tall, a body of tentacles wrapped around a skeletal frame of metal and flesh. Its eyes glowed with sickly light, and wherever it touched, the crystal ground dissolved into sludge. Most species would have fallen back, firing from range. Cole charged. His plasma rifle spat molten death, beams burning holes into the creature's hide. Tentacles lashed out, cutting through steel like paper. Cole ducked, rolled, came up inside its reach. He jammed the barrel of his rifle into what looked like its chest cavity and pulled the trigger until the power cell whined empty. The beast shrieked, collapsing into black sludge that hissed against the ground. "Target down," Cole growled, moving to next. Above the battlefield, Dr. Lisa Chen moved with her escort. She was no soldier, but her body told a different story. Genetic enhancements, cybernetic implants, she was built for survival in places no one else dared go. Her role wasn't killing, it was understanding. Kneeling beside the remains of a void spawn, she scanned the sludge with handheld instruments. Data filled her visor. "Fascinating," she murmured. "Organic, mechanical, and something else. This isn't just biology, it's extra-dimensional. It eats matter and energy, converting both into itself. Evolutionary perfection." Private Rick Santos, her nervous assistant, shifted uncomfortably, rifle raised as smaller swarmlings scuttled in the shadows. "Doc, you make it sound like a science project. That thing almost killed us." Chen smiled faintly behind her visor. "Everything is a science project, Santos, even extinction." She reached out and touched the residue with her armored glove. Her suit screamed with warnings. She ignored them. "It's alive even after death," she whispered, "and learning." On the Vengeance, Morrison watched the tactical display. Red markers spread across the surface like bloodstains. Blue dots, his soldiers, pushed into the heart of the swarm. "Progress?" he asked. Rodriguez tapped her console. "Ground teams report 30% reduction in large bioforms, 60% in smaller, casualties light. But what?" Her face was grim. "No sign of the source. These things aren't random. They're extensions. Something bigger is driving them, and we haven't found it yet." Morrison nodded slowly. That matched the reports. The swarm wasn't just a plague. It was an intelligence, something vast and buried, something old. His gut twisted. This wasn't just a fight for Andros Prime. It was a test. If humanity failed here, the swarm would spread, and then there would be no stopping it. "Prep the drilling teams," Morrison ordered. "We're going underground." The words were heavy, final. If the swarm's heart was beneath the surface, that was where they would go. Elder Zixel stood in the observation chamber, watching the battlefield through alien screens. He saw humans fight like no species he had ever known. They did not retreat. They did not hesitate. They moved through toxic gas, through collapsing buildings, through fire that should have incinerated them. To the Kari, it looked like monsters fighting monsters. "Elder," said Advisor Lexon, voice hushed, almost reverent, "our sensors show the human weapons are releasing radiation, levels that would kill our people instantly. How are they alive down there?" Zixel watched a human soldier walk through a cloud of black gas that dissolved crystal walls like wax. His armor gleamed, unbroken. He moved as if the deadly storm was nothing more than a breeze. "I do not know," Zixel admitted, awe and fear in equal measure. "But they are saving us." Underground, the drilling machines roared to life. Armored vehicles built to survive volcanic heat and crushing pressure plunged into the earth, carrying humans into the black unknown. Sergeant Cole sat inside one, weapon across his lap, eyes on Dr. Chen as she studied the sensors. "How far down?" he asked. "At least 50 miles, she said. Her voice was calm, steady, the tone of someone who had stared into death too many times to flinch anymore. Cole grunted. "That's a long way to dig." Chen didn't look up. "Then we improvise. That's what humans do best." The machine groaned as it cut through rock. The lights flickered. On the radar, something massive stirred below. "Movement," Cole said, eyes narrowing. "Something waiting for us." The ground trembled. The swarm had noticed. And it was coming for them. The drilling machine shuddered as it tore through Andros Prime's crust. Sparks rained from its reinforced bit, grinding against stone that no longer behaved like stone. Inside, Sergeant Ben Cole tightened the straps of his harness as the walls trembled. Around him, his squad checked weapons and systems with the steady ritual of soldiers about to enter hell. The air smelled of oil, scorched metal, and sweat. Dr. Lisa Chen stood at the sensor console, eyes glued to the impossible readings. Lines of data scrolled across her visor, each one more unthinkable than the last. "This isn't right," she murmured. "What now?" Cole asked, voice gruff but calm. "The rock down here isn't rock anymore," Chen said. "It's changing. The swarm is rewriting matter itself. Stone is becoming something else, something alive." Private Rick Santos cursed softly. "So the planet's turning into one giant monster." Chen didn't answer. She didn't need to. The machine groaned again as the earth around it pulsed like muscle, resisting their passage. At 30 miles down, the sensors screamed. "Contact," the pilot shouted. A massive tendril smashed into the machine's side, sending it spinning. Alarms blared. Sparks showered the cabin. "Breaches in Section 3. Cole was already on his feet, helmet sealed, rifle primed. "Open the airlocks," he growled. "We'll take care of it." "You can't go out there," the pilot snapped. "The pressure." "Save the lecture," Cole said. He slammed the manual release. The airlock hissed open and the underground hell poured in. The squad poured out into blackness lit only by their suit lamps. The rock wasn't rock. It writhed, slick and wet, veins of glowing blue energy pulsing like arteries. The tunnel itself seemed alive, a throat swallowing them whole. From the walls, a creature emerged. It was larger than a tank, its body half fluid, half metal, sliding out of the stone like water. Its eyes glowed like burning coals, and its claws were longer than swords. Cole raised his rifle, contact front. The cavern exploded with noise. Plasma fire roared. Grenades thumped, showering the beast in fire that seared its flesh. It shrieked, a sound like tearing steel, and lashed out. A claw struck Cole full force, hurling him against the rock. His armor dented but held. He staggered up, spitting blood, and charged back in. Up close, the thing reeked, a stench of rot and chemicals. Cole's blade hissed as he drove it into the creature's neck, the edge glowing with energy. The beast convulsed and collapsed into a puddle of bubbling black slime. Cole breathed hard, visor fogging. Target down, keep moving. But the walls still pulsed, and deeper below something stirred. Above the battlefield in orbit, Captain Jake Morrison studied the tactical map. His jaw was iron. Alpha Squad reports contact underground, Lieutenant Rodriguez said, her voice clipped. They're still pushing toward the source. Beta Squad is in support. Any word from Chen? Morrison asked. She says the swarm isn't just feeding, it's rewriting the planet. Morrison's face darkened. Then if we don't kill it here, Andros Prime is finished. Sir, Rodriguez hesitated. And maybe more than Andros Prime if this thing spreads. It won't, Morrison's voice was steel. Not while humans are still breathing. Deep below, Chen's reading spiked. Her instruments whined, unable to translate the impossible. We're close, she said. Her voice carried both awe and dread. How close? Cole asked, scanning the darkness with his rifle. Her visor glowed with shifting numbers. Too close. The tunnel opened into a cavern vast beyond comprehension. Cole stepped through and stopped cold. It wasn't a cavern. It was a heart. A chamber of pulsing walls, beating with light and sound, veins running through stone like rivers of fire. In the center hung a mass so vast it hurt to look at, a shape that twisted in and out of dimensions, sometimes solid, sometimes shadow, always shifting. Chen's breath caught. My God. The entity turned. Not with eyes, but with presence. Every nerve in their bodies screamed as the thing noticed them. A pressure filled the cavern, crushing, like the weight of an ocean pressing down on their minds. This isn't just an organism, Chen whispered, her voice trembling. It's intelligent, and it's been here for a long time. How long? Cole asked, forcing the words through clenched teeth. Chen stared at her readouts. Longer than civilization, maybe longer than the galaxy. The ground shuddered. Tendrils of living stone reached for them. Cole raised his rifle. Guess it doesn't like visitors. The squad opened fire. Explosions lit the chamber. The entity screamed, not in sound but in thought, a wave of hate that made their skulls ache. Chen fell to her knees, clutching her helmet. Images seared into her mind, visions of worlds consumed, stars darkened, civilizations erased. It wasn't just eating, it was escaping. Cole, she shouted over the chaos. This isn't an invasion, it's a prison break. What? This thing was trapped here. The Kari built their cities on top of its cage. Now it's breaking free. The walls convulsed. Hundreds of smaller void spawn poured from cracks, eyes glowing, claws reaching. Cole's visor filled with red markers. His squad was surrounded. Alpha to vengeance, he roared over comms. We found the source, it's alive and it's pissed, requesting immediate support. Static screamed in reply. The entity pulsed again, shaking the cavern, twisting reality. Time bent. Space folded. For a heartbeat, Cole saw his squad scattered across different places, some fighting, some dying, some already gone. Then it snapped back and the monsters were closer. Too close. Cole slammed a fresh cell into his rifle. Hold the line. The first wave hit. Plasma fire lit the cavern. Steel and flesh clashed. Screams filled the comms. Chen staggered upright, gripping her scanner even as void spawn rushed her. It's intelligent, it's vast, and it's angry, she shouted. But it's not invincible. A claw slashed for her head, and Cole tackled it aside, firing point-blank into the beast's skull. Doc, he barked, if you've got an idea, now's the damn time. Chen's eyes blazed with revelation. I think I know how to kill it. The cavern shook, the swarm surged, the entity itself began to move. And the humans were running out of time. The cavern shook like the heartbeat of a god. Sergeant Ben Cole's rifle spat fire into the void spawn pressing in from every side. Each creature was claws and teeth and writhing black flesh, their bodies half-formed, like shadows given muscle. His visor screamed with warnings, toxins in the air, radiation levels off the charts, heat building inside his armor. He ignored them all. Hold the line, Cole roared. The squad fought like demons. Plasma bolts tore through limbs, blades cut through sinew and bone. Grenades blasted holes into the tide, only for more monsters to pour in. Dr. Lisa Chen crouched behind shattered rock, her scanner clutched tight, eyes racing over impossible numbers. The entity in the chamber's heart pulsed with power, its form bending dimensions like a prism bending light. Every surge sent more creatures flooding into reality. Santos fired beside her, hands shaking. Doc, we're gonna die down here. No, Chen said. Her voice trembled, but her mind burned with focus. Not if I'm right. Above ground, in the blackened ruins of Andros Prime, Elder Zixel watched the battle feeds. Human dropships streaked across the sky, striking swarm clusters with nuclear fire. On the ground, squads fought in the streets, clearing block after block. The Kari observers behind him whispered in fear. They fight like animals, one murmured. No, Zixel corrected softly. His three eyes never left the screen, where a human soldier stood firing calmly into a storm of claws. They fight like survivors. In orbit, Captain Jake Morrison gripped the railing of the Vengeance's command platform. Report, he snapped. Rodriguez's hands flew across her console. Underground teams have reached the source. Enemy readings, sir, the entity is dimensionally vast. Most of it exists outside normal space. Alpha and Beta squads are under heavy assault. Casualties. Mounting. Morrison's face was carved from stone. He'd commanded humans in wars across 3 systems, but this was different. The swarm wasn't just an enemy, it was inevitability, relentless, endless, hungry. And if they lost here, it would spread. All ground units, Morrison barked into comms. Dig in, no retreat, humanity doesn't run. Back underground, Cole's squad was breaking. Private Harker screamed as a tendril wrapped around him, pulling him into the walls. His armor buckled as the stone swallowed him whole, his comms cutting out in a static-choked cry. Man down, someone shouted. Cole swore and fired into the wall, blasting a hole through flesh-like stone. Black ichor poured out, but Harker was gone. Another soldier fell, ripped in half by a beast twice his size. The cavern floor shook as the entity above them pulsed, laughing in a voice made of earthquakes. Chen forced herself to focus. Cole, she shouted. The Kari crystals, they interact with multiple energy frequencies. If we modify them, they could amplify dimensional resonance. Cole smashed his blade through a spawn skull. English, Doc. I can turn their crystal spires into a weapon, Chen said, words spilling in a rush. The Omega warheads will weaken it, but the crystals can trap it, a feedback loop, tear it apart from every dimension at once. Santos stared at her. That sounds like suicide. Chen met his eyes. So does standing here. On the surface, Captain Kate Brennan led her special operations team through the ruins of the Kari capital. They had been sent to flank swarm clusters, but what they found made her blood run cold. Movement ahead, whispered Corporal Miller. Through the cracked crystal streets, a massive void form loomed, but it wasn't just feeding, it was building. Brennan raised her visor magnification. The monster absorbed shards of Kari technology, weaving them into its own body. Patterns of light pulsed across its flesh, the same patterns she'd seen on Kari machines. It's learning, she whispered. The thing turned, eyes burning with intelligence, and in its clawed grip it held a crude but functional Kari energy rifle. Sir, Brennan said over comms, patching straight to Morrison. We have a problem. The swarm isn't just eating, it's evolving. In the cavern, the battle reached its breaking point. Cole's squad was down to half strength. Armor dented, power cells running low, weapons overheating. The void spawn just kept coming, faster, smarter, adapting. Chen's scanner shrieked. It knows we're trying to stop it. It's accelerating the breach. The walls split apart, revealing a tendril thicker than a building. It slammed down, crushing soldiers like insects. Cole dove aside, the shockwave rattling his bones. "Alpha to vengeance," he roared. "We need support now." Static, then Morrison's voice hard and cold. "Hold your ground. Omega package is armed." Chen's head snapped up. "Omega, you can't." Morrison's voice cut through. "Doc, you said this thing exists outside space. Omega strikes can reach it. If you've got a better plan, now's the time." Chen's mind raced. The crystals, the resonance, it could work if she had time. "We need to modify the crystal structures," she shouted. "If we synchronize the blasts with crystal resonance, we can contain it." Morrison's reply was grim. "Then you've got 10 minutes. Cole slammed a new cell into his rifle. Sweat poured down his back inside the suit. He looked at Chen, her hands moving in a blur over salvaged Kari tech. "Doc," he said quietly, even as plasma fire roared around them. "If this doesn't work." Chen didn't look up. "Then none of us live long enough to care." The ground trembled, the entity pulsed. And above, in orbit, the Omega warheads were already falling. The Omega warheads dropped like iron meteors. From orbit, Captain Jake Morrison watched their descent on the tactical screen. Each cylinder was the size of a building, its hull blackened, reinforced to withstand entry into a planet's crust. They carried weapons no other species dared to use, dimensional disruptors, designed to tear creatures apart in realities unseen. Rodriguez's hands trembled over her console. "Omega strike in 30 seconds, sir." Morrison's jaw locked. He knew what the Omegas meant. They weren't rescue tools. They were hammers meant to smash entire ecosystems, and if they failed here, there wouldn't be a second chance. "All units," he said into comms, voice steady as steel. "Brace for detonation." Deep underground, Sergeant Ben Cole slammed his shoulder against the cavern wall, firing point-blank into a void spawn's skull. Its ichor sprayed across his armor, sizzling like acid. Above him, the massive entity pulsed with anticipation. It knew, it felt the warheads coming. "Doc," Cole shouted over the din, "we're out of time." Dr. Lisa Chen knelt at the base of a fractured Kari crystal spire jutting from the cavern floor. Her hands moved in a blur, welding human tech into alien stone. Sparks showered her armor. Her scanner's readings were chaotic. The crystals were already vibrating with energy from the entity's presence. "If I can sync their frequency to the detonations," Chen said, teeth gritted, "the crystals will create a resonance trap. It'll amplify the dimensional tier instead of just wounding it." "And if you can't?" Chen didn't look up. "Then the Omegas rip half the planet apart and we die screaming." Santos swallowed hard, firing into the horde pressing closer. "No pressure, Doc." The cavern shook as the first Omega struck. The detonation was not like an explosion. It was like reality itself screamed. Colors bled from stone. Air rippled. For a moment, every human in the chamber saw things that should not exist, landscapes folding into themselves, cities upside down in the void, faces of creatures older than stars staring back at them. The void spawn shrieked, their forms unraveling, collapsing into sludge. The entity howled, a sound that ripped through their minds like claws. Chen's instruments flared. "Yes, it's working, but not enough." The second Omega hit. The cavern's ceiling cracked, stone twisting into liquid. The entity pulsed, dragging more of itself into normal space to escape the dimensional assault. That was Chen's opening. "Cole, buy me 60 seconds. Cole glanced at his squad, 6 soldiers left out of 12. Armor cracked, weapons smoking, bodies on the edge of collapse. He spat blood and raised his rifle. "You heard the lady. 60 seconds, give her hell." They roared as one and charged. Above ground, Brennan's special ops team fought through the streets of the Kari capital. "Ma'am," Miller shouted, ducking under a spray of energy bolts. "They're using the weapons they took, and they're coordinating." Brennan fired her last grenade, blowing a hole through a swarm cluster. "Then we don't let them keep the initiative. Move." The city twisted around them. Streets writhed. Buildings bent into claws. The entire world was becoming an extension of the entity's will. From orbit, Morrison's voice thundered into their comms. "Brennan, fall back to rally point 7. We're consolidating. The Omegas are hitting now." Brennan's helmet display flickered with seismic readings. The planet itself was groaning under the stress. Copy that, she said, pulling her people back. But in her gut, she knew if Chen's plan failed, there would be no Rally Point 7. There would be no Andros Prime. Back underground, Chen slammed a final module into place. The modified crystals hummed, glowing with inner fire. Cole, she shouted. Now I need them charged, hit the spires with plasma. Cole didn't hesitate. He barked into comms, all guns on the spires, light him up. Beams of molten energy hammered the crystal structures. They vibrated, singing a note that was felt more than heard. The cavern resonated like a bell struck by a god. The energy pulsed upward, catching the Omega detonations still rippling through dimensions. The feedback loop ignited. The entity screamed. Its vast form twisted, parts of it ripped across dimensions. Whole swarms dissolved mid-charge, collapsing into ash. The ground convulsed, tearing itself apart as the trap tightened. Chen's visor flared white. It's working. Then her smile faded. No, it's adapting. The entity surged, pouring more of itself into reality. The trap held, but barely. The resonance strained, cracks splitting across the crystals. We need more power, Chen cried. Cole's ammo counter blinked red. He had nothing left but his blade. Then we give it everything we've got. He charged, slamming his energy blade into the crystal itself. Sparks erupted. The resonance spiked. His HUD screamed with radiation warnings, armor failing. But the spire lit brighter, pouring power into the trap. The entity thrashed, tendrils whipping through the chamber. One slammed into Cole, crushing him against stone. His armor groaned, bones breaking, blood filling his mouth. Chen screamed his name. But Cole only grinned through blood. Tell me it worked, Doc. The crystals sang louder, burning with resonance. The entity shrieked, chunks of its vast body tearing away, dissolving into nothing. It's working, Chen whispered, tears in her eyes. But the price was clear. Cole's vitals blinked red across her visor. His body hung limp, pinned beneath a tendril of writhing black. And the entity, though wounded, still lived. Above ground, Elder Zixel stood in silence as the planet shook beneath his feet. The Kari refugees around him cried out in terror as whole city blocks collapsed into glowing fissures. Elder, Advisor Velter whispered, his voice trembling. The humans, they are destroying our world. Zixel's gaze remained fixed on the feeds. Soldiers fought in fire and shadow, blood and smoke, standing against a god of hunger. No, he said softly. They are saving it, but saving always has a cost. In orbit, Rodriguez stared at her console, voice tight. Sir, readings show massive dimensional disruption. The entity is wounded, but it's still alive, and it's trying to push into orbit. Morrison's eyes hardened. Then we finish it here. He turned to his crew. Prep the fleet. All guns, all power, all hands. If this thing breaks free, the galaxy burns. We hold the line. The order rang like iron across the bridge. And below, in the depths of Andros Prime, Dr. Chen realized something worse. The entity wasn't just surviving the trap. It was learning from it. The cavern split apart. Stone became liquid, crystal bent like bone, and the air itself screamed. The entity surged upward, dragging vast tendrils of living darkness through the crust. For a moment, Andros Prime groaned like a dying beast, and then the planet began to change. Streets twisted into veins. Towers became claws. Rivers flowed black with sludge. On the ground, Kari refugees fled in panic as their once beautiful world collapsed around them. And in orbit, Captain Jake Morrison watched in grim silence. Sir, Rodriguez said, her voice tight, the entity is breaching the surface. Its mass is expanding into orbit if it escapes. Morrison cut her off. It won't. Sir. He turned, eyes like steel. Lieutenant, we're the line between this thing and the galaxy. We don't break. The bridge went silent. Every crew member knew what that meant. They would fight until nothing remained. Deep underground, Dr. Lisa Chen knelt beside Sergeant Ben Cole. His armor was crushed, blood staining his lips. His vitals flickered weakly across her visor. Don't you dare, Chen whispered, her hands pressing against his chest plate. Cole coughed, a broken grin tugging at his mouth. Doc, you better make this worth it. Tears blurred her vision. I will. Santos grabbed her arm. Dr. Chen, we've got to move. The entity's breaking free. Chen's scanner whined with impossible readings. The resonance trap had worked, but only partially. The entity was still adapting, bending the laws of physics to escape. If it reached orbit, no fleet could stop it. Chen's mind raced. The Omega weapons wounded it because they struck its extra-dimensional body. The crystals amplified the strike, but it wasn't enough. Unless... She looked up at the cavern walls, glowing with fractured light. The Kari crystal veins ran across the planet, an interconnected web. If she could ignite them all at once, she could turn Andros Prime itself into a weapon. It would kill the entity and destroy the planet. Her chest clenched. Could she ask that price? Could she condemn the Kari's world to save the galaxy? Cole's rasping voice answered the question. Do it, Doc, don't hesitate. On the surface, Captain Kate Brennan's team fought through streets that pulsed like living flesh. Void spawn swarmed in coordinated packs, wielding stolen Kari weapons fused into their limbs. Plasma fire sizzled overhead. Hayes' left flank, Brennan shouted. Staff Sergeant Nina Hayes swung her heavy cannon, vaporizing a cluster of creatures trying to cut them off. Miller's sensors screamed with red warnings. Ma'am, he yelled, the ground's alive, it's moving under us. The street rippled like water. Buildings folded into themselves. From the horizon, a tendril thicker than a mountain clawed toward the sky. Brennan's blood ran cold. This isn't a world anymore, she muttered. It's a body. Above, Morrison stood firm as the tactical screen bloomed with warnings. Sir, Rodriguez said, voice breaking, the entity is breaching into orbit. Its mass is expanding faster than we can track. It's bigger than our ships. Morrison's jaw tightened. He turned to comms. Get me Chen. Static crackled, then Chen's voice came through, ragged but alive. Captain, listen carefully. I can stop it, but we'll lose the planet. Morrison froze. Destroy the Kari's world. Billions of lives had already been lost. Millions more were in orbit, watching, waiting. Could he condemn the survivors to exile? Explain, he said. The Kari crystals form a planetary network, Chen said quickly. If we overload them in resonance with Omega detonations, we can trap the entity between dimensions. It won't just be wounded. It'll be erased. Rodriguez whispered, she's talking about burning the planet alive. Morrison's chest felt heavy. Humanity had been called monsters for centuries, but never without reason. They did what others wouldn't, what others couldn't. And sometimes, survival demanded it. Chen, Morrison said finally, his voice steady, do it. We'll evacuate as many Kari as we can. Zixel's face appeared on a side screen, his silver skin pale with grief. Captain Morrison, are you saying my world must die? Morrison's eyes softened. Elder, if your world lives, the galaxy dies. I won't let that happen. Zixel closed his eyes. His voice broke as he whispered, then may the spirits guide you, monster of Earth. Back underground, Chen slammed the last module into the crystal spire. Sparks erupted, energy humming through the veins around her. The resonance spread like fire in glass, lighting the tunnels for miles. Santos stared at the glowing walls. Doc, that's the whole planet. Chen's voice trembled. That's the point. The ground convulsed. The entity screamed, tearing free of the crust, half its vast body now rising into the sky. Cole coughed blood, his voice a whisper. Finish it. Chen's hands shook as she activated the sequence. Her visor flooded with red warnings. Captain Morrison, she said into comms. I'm triggering the resonance. You need to hit the crystal network with everything you've got. Plasma, nukes, Omega, all of it. Morrison's voice came back like a hammer. Copy, fleet, all guns, fire for effect. From orbit, Earth's fleet unleashed hell. Nuclear warheads streaked down in glowing trails. Plasma cannons roared, tearing through atmosphere. The last Omega warheads detonated, ripping dimensions like paper. The planet itself became a weapon. The Kari crystals blazed with impossible light, resonating across time and space. The energy hit the entity like chains, dragging its vast body between dimensions. It shrieked, its voice echoing across every frequency, every mind. Soldiers dropped to their knees, clutching helmets. Kari refugees screamed as the sound rattled their bones. But the resonance held. The entity twisted, tearing apart as its extra-dimensional body was ripped across realities. Void spawn disintegrated mid-charge, their black flesh dissolving into dust. The cavern collapsed around Chen. She clung to the spire, her body shaking, tears streaming. Die, she whispered, just die. The entity convulsed, its vast tendrils flailing. One slammed into the surface, ripping a mountain in half. Another lashed into orbit, striking an Earth frigate and shattering it into debris. But the resonance did not stop. The chains tightened, and the monster screamed as it began to unravel. On the surface, Brennan's team watched as the capital city folded inward, collapsing into a glowing pit. Hayes whispered, "What the hell are they doing?" Brennan's eyes widened as the crystal towers blazed like suns. "They're turning the planet into a bomb." In orbit, Morrison's knuckles whitened on the railing as the screens lit with impossible energy. Rodriguez's face was pale. "Sir, if they succeed, Andros Prime won't survive." Morrison's voice was low, steady. "Neither will the swarm, that's the mission." The ship shook as shockwaves rattled space itself. Debris streaked across the void, yet the fleet held position, pouring fire into the crystal network below. "Hold the line," Morrison said softly. "For them, for everyone." Deep below, Chen's body screamed with pain as energy surged through her. Her implants sizzled, skin burning beneath her suit. Cole's broken voice reached her through static. "Doc, tell me it's done." She choked back a sob. "Almost." Her visor showed the entity tearing apart, its form splitting across realities, screaming as it died. But it wasn't fast enough. Parts of it were still clawing upward, still trying to break free. She realized what had to happen. Her enhancements could channel the energy. If she tied her own body into the crystal network, she could push the resonance past the threshold. It would burn her alive, but it would finish the job. Chen closed her eyes, thinking of Earth, of humanity's long history of sacrifice, of doing what no one else would. "Sometimes," she whispered, "the galaxy needs monsters." She pressed her hands into the crystal and screamed as the energy consumed her. The resonance flared. The entity howled one final time. And then, with a sound like reality shattering, it was gone. Andros Prime convulsed, cities collapsed, mountains shattered. The crystal network burned white-hot, detonating across the planet. In orbit, Morrison's screens went blinding. Shockwaves slammed into the fleet. When the light faded, the entity was gone. So was Andros Prime. All that remained was ash, fire, and the broken survivors fleeing into orbit. Silence. For the first time in weeks, Andros Prime was quiet. No swarm howls, no explosions, no screaming skis. But the silence was not peace. The planet below was a ruin. Crystal cities lay shattered, mountains cracked, oceans boiling. Fires burned across the surface, painting the horizon in orange and black. The Kari's home, their shining jewel of a world, was gone. In orbit, the Earth Defense Fleet drifted among debris. Half their ships were scarred, several were gone, but the entity was dead. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, his uniform burned, his face lined with exhaustion. He stared at the ruined world below, his reflection ghosted against the view screen. Rodriguez approached quietly. "Sir, the swarm's signatures are gone, it's really over." Morrison didn't smile, he only nodded once. "And the cost?" Rodriguez's voice dropped. "Thousands of human casualties, half our fleet crippled, Andros Prime uninhabitable, survivors evacuated to orbit, but," she hesitated, "Chen never reported back." Morrison closed his eyes. He'd known, deep down, the moment the resonance flared too bright. Lisa Chen had given everything. Aboard a refugee vessel, Elder Zixel stood among his people. They wept in silence, watching their world burn through observation windows. Children clutched their parents. Families held each other tightly, as if their touch alone could anchor them to a home now lost forever. Velter whispered, voice shaking, "We are a people without a world." Zixel's hearts ached, but when his eyes lifted, he saw the human fleet still in formation, scarred and broken but unyielding. Soldiers moved like ghosts, tending to their wounded, repairing what they could, carrying on despite it all. "They saved us," Zixel said softly. Velter turned incredulous. "Saved us? Elder, they destroyed our planet." Zixel shook his head slowly. "No, the swarm destroyed it. The humans gave us a future." He placed a trembling hand on the window, watching the monsters of Earth linger in orbit. "We called them monsters. Perhaps they are, but monsters are what we needed." On the surface of the ruined world, Amidst collapsed crystal spires and rivers of molten stone, a beacon flickered weakly. A battered drilling machine lay half-buried in rubble. Inside, Sergeant Ben Cole stirred, his body broken but alive. His suit had sealed him just long enough. He coughed, blood in his throat, whispering into a dead calm, "Doc." There was no answer. Only the hum of cooling stone, the fatting glow of the crystal network, and the silence of a sacrifice completed. Cole's eyes blurred with pain and tears. Chen was gone, he knew it. She had burned herself alive to finish the job. And still, he whispered, "Damn proud of you, Doc." 3 days later, the survivors gathered aboard the Vengeance. The Kari elders stood beside human officers in a chamber meant for war councils, but now serving as a memorial. Zixel stepped forward, his silver skin dulled with grief but his voice steady. "People of Earth, on behalf of the Kari, I speak these words. You came when no one else did. You fought when all others fled. You saved what remained of my people, though the cost was our world itself." He bowed his head deeply, a gesture of respect his people had not offered another species in millennia. "We will never forget. You are monsters, yes, but monsters who stood between us and annihilation, and for that we are grateful." The chamber was quiet. Many Kari wept. Even hardened human soldiers bowed their heads. Morrison stepped forward then, his face grave. "We don't fight for thanks, Elder. We fight because someone has to. Because when monsters come for the galaxy," he glanced around the room, his voice iron, "sometimes it takes other monsters to put them down." In the weeks that followed, humanity became a whisper in galactic halls, and not the kind whispered in fear alone. The Altarians sang of the ashes of Andros Prime, songs heavy with grief, but also with awe. The Krenari warriors spoke Morrison's name with respect, calling him the commander who stood where no one else dared. Even the ethereals, who had ignored the Kari's call, took note of the humans for the first time in centuries. A Deathworld species had destroyed what no one else could, and in doing so, they had claimed a place the galaxy could no longer ignore. Ben Cole recovered slowly in a medical bay aboard the Vengeance. His body bore scars he would carry forever, but his eyes carried something heavier. Rodriguez visited often, bringing reports, sometimes silence. One day, she found him staring at a small, cracked data recorder. "Doc Chen," she asked softly. Cole nodded, his voice was rough. She left her notes, all of them data on the entity, warnings about others like it. Rodriguez frowned. "Others?" Cole's jaw tightened. She found traces, energy signatures on 17 other worlds, if the Kari's prison wasn't unique. He didn't finish, he didn't need to. Rodriguez's face paled. "Then this war isn't over." "No," Cole said, eyes burning with quiet fury. "It's just beginning." At the edge of the galaxy, stories spread. Stories of a dead world saved by creatures the galaxy had feared for centuries. Stories of monsters from Earth who burned brighter than suns, who bled and sacrificed and stood when no one else dared. Some called them Deathworlders. Others called them savages. But the survivors of Andros Prime called them something else. Hope. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Morrison stood alone, gazing into the void. His reflection stared back, scarred, weary, but unbroken. Chen's words echoed in his memory, as if carried on the silence of space. Sometimes the galaxy needs monsters. He whispered into the stars, a vow more than words. Then monsters will be. The ship's engines roared, carrying humanity forward, into a galaxy that now knew its only hope might come from the monsters of Earth.